KBOI 2 News, first at 4.
Good afternoon. Federal investigators are retracing the moments leading up to a deadly trench collapse.
And we have learned the names of the two workers who were killed last night. The Ada County coroner identifying them as 36-year-old Bert Smith and 26-year-old Ernesto Saucedo Zapata. Now, Smith lived in Caldwell. Saucedo Zapata was from Nampa. A third man was pulled out alive and is recovering. He has not been identified.
We have team coverage of the deadly collapse. Morgan Wagner talked to crisis managers who help family members after tragedies like this one.
But first, Scott Logan spoke to investigators. He's live from the scene of the accident.
As you can see, a makeshift cross has been erected here at the site of the accident in memory of the two workers who were killed. And the trench that collapsed, killing them, has been resurfaced here on Gary Lane. And the federal agency OSHA is looking into this accident. And earlier I spoke with the director of Boise's OSHA office. As crews finished resurfacing the trench, the first thing I asked OSHA was if they knew what caused it to collapse in the first place.
I can't comment on the details of an open investigation. But I can tell you, trenching and excavation hazards are very serious. They're widely recognized.
And I was told the main danger in trench and excavation work is a lack of cave-in protection.
And that means, sloping or sloping back or shoring the trench or excavation with, like trench shields or other sorts of equipment to be able to prevent the walls from coming in on workers.
And Kern said the common factor in most cave-in accidents is they are almost always entirely preventable. So who is responsible for making sure those protections are in place?
From an OSHA standpoint, the main responsibility has to actually be on the employer.
This OSHA investigation could last 3 months.
We have a 6-month statute of limitations if we're going to issue any citations. That said, we like to get these things closed up as timely as possible, so the employer, the victims' families, of course, everybody can have as much closure as soon as possible.
Fines, if there are any, could range from $7,000 to $70,000, depending on how much negligence was involved. Now, this trench and excavation work is so dangerous that OSHA compliance officers are directed to stop whenever they see a trench work going on or an excavation taking place and check it out to make sure there's no imminent hazard. And that's just a sign of how seriously they take this. Live in Boise, Scott Logan, KBOI 2 News.
Meantime, OSHA investigators say they are not releasing the name of the company the men worked for. They referred us back to Boise police, who then referred us back to OSHA. However, OSHA did tell us the company has no previous violations on record. Now, at the scene of the collapse yesterday, there was a truck with hard rock construction on it. We visited their offices today. They told us they don't have a statement and they're not sure if they will be releasing one.
Now, as we mentioned, emergency crews worked tirelessly last night to get to the 3 men trapped in that ditch. It took them only a few minutes to free the man who survived, but then it became a slow battle to get to the other 2.
And there's yards and yards of dirt on top of these guys. We can't use the heavy equipment because the vibrations might cause another collapse, so we literally have to take the dirt out bucket by bucket. And inside that trench, it gets very hot. There's no ventilation in there. It's very difficult work.
Battalion Chief Cooper says his crew trains hundreds of hours for technical rescue missions just like this one.
Now, in these situations, emergency crews and witnesses are provided with on-scene counseling.
It's part of a national program that came to the Treasure Valley in the last year. Morgan Wagner continues our team coverage live in Boise.
It's called the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP, and it's made up of about 30 volunteers that can provide emotional support in an emergency situation within just 20 minutes, just like they did right here last night.
Typically, TIP is called in for some sort of death. It could be a senior death. Mrs. Smith wakes up, Mr. Smith doesn't wake up. First responders respond to her 911, and there's really nothing they can do. So again, typically they're death related. However, we do respond to missing persons, car accidents, any type of call like that.
TIP chapter manager Kimber Jenkins and her volunteer tell me their program is a resource they hope you never need to use.
When we get on scene, we check with the requesting officer or the first responder that is still on scene and ask them who they think that we can best support. So we're looking for those survivors, whether they're bystanders or family members.
Jenkins says the volunteers going out to provide emotional support are not licensed counselors, just folks who have a heart willing to help.
You don't have to have a background in anything. My background was I want to help somebody. So we have people who have had backgrounds, chaplains or people who are nurses. We're all diverse and there's no stipulation. It's just anybody who wants to help.
TIP volunteers go through a 55-hour training academy, as well as continuous training classes once a month. The nonprofit also provides up to 3 free counseling sessions for anyone that they help. The next academy for future volunteers will begin in September. To sign up for this program, you can visit our website, KBOI2.com, and click on news links. Live in Boise, Morgan Wagner, KBOI2 News.
Now stay with us for continuing coverage of the aftermath of the trench collapse and the investigation. We'll have more coming up at 5:30 and 10. And for updates in between our newscasts, head to KBOI2.com or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.